Two.
Hello and welcome. Today's presentation will be on Microsoft and is done by William Kaplan and myself, Kevin Guth.
Thanks, Kevin. All right, so today we're going to cover Microsoft. We're going to first give an overview of Microsoft and a quick history lesson on the company. Then we're going to talk about our focus and what we decided to research in regards to Microsoft's management practices. And then that led us into our research journey, where we found all sorts of different types of data. Good, not good, and really not good. And then we leads us into our recommendations, which the recommendations that we're going to make, we're calling our whistleblower policies, our reinstatement of dedicated ethics team, um, separating the CEO and board chairman positions, as well as preventing conflict-driven engagements,
Mhm.
both external and internal within the company, and finally, our references.
Just a short overview of Microsoft. They were co-founded by Paul Allen and Bill Gates in 1975. They benefit from their first mover advantages of the modern global tech industry. They're headquartered in Washington, D.C., and headed by CEO Satya Nadella. Um, their ongoing challenge, the most important one so far, is their AI race. So right now, multiple companies are racing to push out their AI products, and that is leading to casualties where other areas of the company aren't being addressed, aren't being as focused on as much as they should. So that's their main challenge.
Thanks, Kevin. All right. So the focus that we decided to zero in on with Microsoft, due to the nature of this AI race and some of the more recent news articles that we've just already knew about before doing any research, was that we wanted to look at their ethics and corporate social responsibilities programs. So starting with the ethics, ethics is essentially the set of moral principles or norms that are kind of standardized amongst cultures throughout the world, and these norms dictate what is considered ethical and or unethical within that culture. So if you're conforming with these norms, then that's ethical behavior, and if you're not, it's unethical. And to by extension, if you are violating the ethical protocols and policies within an organization, that's called workplace deviance. And that's basically where there's a formal outline ethics policy and it's just simply not being followed.
Mhm.
So, in order to deal with instances like that, the U.S. Sentencing Commission has put a little bit of teeth into their policies, and they strongly recommend ethical behavior to be promoted within U.S. firms. And they even go on to suggest possible penalizations and fines for violations and even how to calculate those fines out. So
Mhm.
that it's taken um, a look at what's going on in the internal ethics situations in these companies, and now that the U.S. governance is involved, it's finally giving them a really good legal reason to act ethically.
Right. And the second part of our focus is corporate social responsibility, which is a business's obligation to pursue policies, make decisions, and take actions that benefit society. And there's two main models when it comes to CSR, and one is the stakeholder model, which includes both internal and external users. And what this model focuses is on is looking out for the interests of both of those types of users. And the other model is the shareholder model. And their focus is not on the interests of all types of users. It's mainly on the shareholders and bringing in profit. And the reason that this is not the model that we want to focus on is because it leaves out, protecting and looking out for, the employees, the customers, anyone who is has an interest in the company.
Right. The
So,
environment, everybody is considered a stakeholder, everyone who has any involvement with the company, and for them to basically count them out of not being important, it kind of leaves a little bit on the table.
right.
All right, so this led us down our path on our research journey, and during our journey, we found many different types of reports about Microsoft, and these are the categories we found.
The good, the not good, and the really not good.
Yeah, so the good was where the ethics and corporate social responsibility programs were in place and they were being followed and they were effective.
Hmm.
Um, the not good was what we considered where they were in place and partially effective, but maybe needed to be strengthened or updated, or perhaps there was just kind of like a fluke that occurred.
Right.
And then the really not good category that we made was where there was an ethics policy in place, but it was just blatantly disregarded
Hmm.
or bypassed, or it was never installed to begin with. So
Right.
there was never anything governing it. So that's what we call the really not good category. And
Mhm.
so having said that, we'll lead on into the good. So the good. Um, Microsoft has been known historically for strong conservative corporate social responsibility efforts. They usually have a relatively ethical history. If you look at their overall policies, they've always had a very strong and clearly defined ethics guidelines and policies uh, in place. And the issue I think that is that you have to stay on top of it, and it easily becomes outdated and relegated. So one of these things that we found was that they've been featured on independent lists multiple times, but this one here, where they reported that their company culture is so positive that they go out and they will try and do community development projects in their local communities and trying to build up nonprofits as well as doing volunteer work, all sorts of community engagements that they do that shows that there really is an intention for them that they have to really try and follow through on their ethics policies. It's not just a bunch of hot air. They really do act on it.
Hmm.
Another thing we found was that they make huge contributions to nonprofits, educational sectors. They make donations to charities. On this one, they made a $142 million donation to over 19,000 Red Cross organizations, specifying educational needs for underdeveloped countries, and trying to spur growth of computer science departments within these educational settings. So that's pretty big for smaller countries for them to go in and do that. Another one that we found was that they've been found to they recently investing heavily in a chat GPT essentially with OpenAI that's meant to be for educational only purposes, and that the normal chat GPT that most people know, it was trained using just all sorts of random things on the internet, but this one is being trained by specifically professional school teachers that are teaching the AI how to teach humans better. So this is another element of their philanthropy that is coming out where they're trying to breathe some life into these less fortunate communities, which is really was commendable, and we were really happy to see that.
Right. So those were some good aspects of Microsoft, but not everything can be good. In 2023, one of the good, not good things was the COPA violation settlement. So in 2023, Microsoft admitted that Xbox Live was harvesting personal data from children under 13 without their parents' consent. The FTC leveled a $20 million penalty, and Microsoft quickly shut down their practice. They updated their privacy notes, and they promised regular compliance audits. This is an example of property deviance because they misuse customer data as if it was their own. And also, because they didn't self-report and their compliance was not in practice, their culpability score stayed high, which drove the multiplier up. So if they'd self-disclosed, they could have knocked off at least 5 points, and that would have meant they would have paid a lot less in penalties. The second not good thing was the AI ethics team layoff. In March 2023, Microsoft cut its ethics and society team, which was dedicated to making sure its AI products were being developed responsibly. In a leaked audio via platformer, Microsoft AI Vice President John Montgomery revealed he was under intense pressure by leadership, and I quote, "The pressure from CTO Kevin Scott and CEO Satya Nadella is very, very high to move open AI models into customers' hands at a very high speed," end quote. This confirms that ethics were being deprioritized for rapid AI rollout. And it's a mistake because it showed the company cared more about rushing AI tools like Copilot than making sure they were safe and fair. Now, Microsoft said a ethical responsibility would move to product teams backed by automated tools, but the issue with that is that without a central ethics unit, ethical concerns might be ignored. In our material, this is called production deviance, and it's an example of it because the quality and thoroughness of ethics work dropped and oversight standards weren't met. Microsoft has still not reinstated its centralized ethics team. They do still maintain their Office of Responsible AI, which sets high-level policies, but it doesn't directly integrate ethics into product design like the former team did. Mm.
Thanks, Kevin. All right. Moving on to the really not good category. Um, we found that there were some instances where Microsoft C-suite completely bypasses their own policies in some instances. And one of these instances is the CEO at the time, only a CEO in 2021 also became chairman of the board of directors, which is just this convergence of massive power in the within the executive portions of the company. So um, really, whenever the CEO and the chairman are the same individual, the company is essentially turned into a monarchy, and it's being led with, you know, no one can really change the will of what the CEO slash chairman wants. Um, so that was an immediate red flag when we saw it, and then that we found was accompanied with the fact that uh, the Indian-born CEO and chairman Satya Nadella also made several sexist comments to a fellow board member at the time, ultimately leading to her being pushed out of the board um, altogether. And now Microsoft has historically represented one of the most diverse boards of directors, especially for a company of its size. And for that shift to suddenly start to occur where we're seeing sexism in this board, it's I think it's a big indicator of what's currently going on in the C-suite. And so whenever we take a look at this, it's really what we're looking at is personal aggression. This is something that is personal between the chairman and the then former board member, and really it violates virtually every single line of ethical code that has ever been written within Microsoft. So the fact that it's gone without any system of checks was really something that struck us in a very significant way.
Right. The last not good thing regarding Microsoft is the employee protests at the anniversary. So on April 4th, 2025, during Microsoft's 50th anniversary celebration at its Redmond headquarters, two software engineers, Ibital Abu Saad and Vania Agrawal, interrupted events to protest the company's AI technology being used by the Israeli military in Gaza. Their advocacy group is No Azure for Apartheid. It consists of employees, and their purpose is to oppose Microsoft's contract with Israel. An AP investigation revealed Microsoft and OpenAI's AI models used by Israel to select bombing targets in Gaza and Lebanon, including in a 2023 airstrike that killed a Lebanese family. Microsoft holds a $133 million contract with Israel's Ministry of Defense, providing Azure cloud services and AI for surveillance and targeting systems. Now, Abu Saad was fired on April 7th for willful misconduct and causing disruption. Microsoft termination letter cites her failure to use internal channels to raise concerns. As far as Agrawal, she had already resigned, but she was forced to leave immediately instead of her planned April 11th departure. Both the engineers and Microsoft can be seen as committing political deviance, as the engineers broke workplace norms and used their platform to protest a corporate event, whereas Microsoft is committing organizational political deviance because they allegedly helped a foreign military target civilians using its AI.
Pretty reprehensible.
Hmm.
All right, so this leads us into our recommendations. And one of the first and most important recommendations we wanted to make was the importance of whistleblower policies being adequate and substantial enough to protect whistleblowers in the modern era, which there are whistleblower policies in place. It's not 100% public information, it doesn't seem like, from Microsoft. We were able to find some of their policies, but not 100% transparency, which is a little bit disturbing as well. So one of the first recommendations we want to make is that we want to basically bolster, reinstate, and strengthen all of the whistleblower policies that were once um, in action at Microsoft, and basically develop them even further than that. Because in this modern era, what was good enough in the old days is uh, no longer enough.
Okay.
So these new policies, really, this is a standard, is to have a call line. The new policy would call for them to have a 24-hour line, where you can make an anonymous tip that there's some sort of unethical things going on, where you can also receive support, um,
Hmm.
and also an online, um, an anonymous reporting uh, function as well, where you can have that utilized by both employees internal in the company that want to remain anonymous, and to the public, where someone may just be working nearby and see something that happens, and they want to report it and it get to the proper channels within Microsoft. So we want to implement a whistleblower policy that dictates a 24-hour call line, as well as an anonymous tip reporting system that is online.
Hmm.
Um, on top of that, we want these systems to be regularly monitored by professionals and led by an appointed ethics officer that is already in place at the company. So these the team is not, but the officer is. So the officer could assemble this team, and they could have personnel on standby. It wouldn't take a large team for them to have the necessary support to be able to at least provide whistleblowers enough confidence to come forward and make the necessary reports for them to be able to catch some of these things that are happening, before they get out of control. Um, and then finally, what we just said is kind of just the industry standard now, but Microsoft's stance and their mission statement and pretty much everything that they stand for is to go above and beyond that. And so for them to do that, for them to go above and beyond with their whistleblower policy, um, we are suggesting that they implement a legal protections team to provide legal counsel and legal representation to whistleblowers who, in most cases, can't afford to represent themselves already. And especially when they're going up against these massive legal teams that will just eat them for lunch. So for Microsoft to really be at the forefront of corporate social responsibility and ethical virtue, um, they could implement team, this legal team, to represent whistleblowers that would be employed once they've found legitimacy within an investigation of ethical concern. There's a bunch of ways to implement it specifically, but just having it there would be enough. I think that to bring so many more people forward that normally would have never said
Yeah.
anything because they're going. It's David versus the Goliath in this situation with these whistleblowers, and
Mhm.
that's the unfortunate reality that a lot of people don't understand. So we think that subsidizing this legal counsel would be important, and I think that it would even be possible to partially fund this with some of the other philanthropic activities that Microsoft does in tandem with nonprofits and some of the nonprofits that have um, legal representation capabilities for other similar types of situations. So it
Mhm.
could end up being a thing that doesn't cost a whole lot for the company to do.
Right. There's some great ideas that Microsoft should implement. The next recommendation we have for Microsoft is for them to reinstate a dedicated ethics team. So the main reason for this recommendation is that Microsoft's current setup leans too heavily on automated compliance checks and dumping ethics into the products team. So instead, what they should do is implement a standalone ethics team that one reports straight to the executives and the board. This makes sure that ethics aren't buried in legal or engineering branches. When the ethics team has a direct line to the top, they can actually influence big decisions instead of trying to get things approved by others who don't take it seriously. This is supported by our material, where in Chapter 4, Section 4, we learn top management must model ethical behavior in order to establish an ethical climate. The ethics team should also be embedded in strategic planning. Now, this might sound obvious, but basically, they sit in a room when new projects, acquisitions, or partnerships are being sketched out so that they catch the risk early and not when the press is already blowing up about it. The third thing this team would do is update Microsoft Trust Code to lean on integrity-based language. Again, in Chapter 4, Section 4 of our textbook, we are given a basic model of ethical decision making. One of those steps is to analyze our options. So that includes looking at the company's code of ethics for guidance. This is where the team swaps out threat of punishment phrases for value-centered guidance. So instead of don't do X or else, it's do Y, here's why, and here's how to choose the right action when it's unclear. After that, this team would hold regular ethical scenario workshops. For example, a case would be run where the team would have to decide whether to pull a data analytics feature if it risks being used in war zones. They would walk through real trade-offs, debate, and then debrief. This would train leadership to think beyond can we do it and more towards should we do it. The next thing this team would do is shift automated compliance to proactive prevention. This is so that rather than just feeding rules into an algorithm, the ethicists flag high risk areas ahead of time. Like management tries to push a project that has a potential to be politically motivated, then that project would be flagged and any concerns with that project would be addressed more urgently. The last thing this team would do is publish quarterly ethics summaries. So this is a short, honest memo on what issues came up, how they were handled, and what's next. The purpose is to maintain honesty with the team and build employee trust.
Perfect. Well, moving on to the next recommendation. The third recommendation we want to make is, oh, it looks like we're running out of time again. We have 9 minutes. The third recommendation we wanted to make would be to separate the CEO and board chairman executive roles within the company. Um, Having these two roles together is just too much power in one place and allows for these executives to essentially act with impunity within the company against all the ethics codes, against all the policies, against everything that you put up. So our main recommendation for addressing that issue is to urge the board to vote on a proposal to um, essentially implement a policy that makes it impossible for a single individual to hold both of these positions at the same time. Um, and really, I think the best way about going about that would be because Microsoft's board is already oriented in an ethical and corporate social responsibility approach. They will probably take well to this, and um, you can basically educate them that uh, in the way that most of these modern companies are moving towards this separation of these powers. In fact, we've seen a 55% increase in the amount of S&P 500 companies that are shifting to a more diversified power structure at the top, where they specifically have to separate the CEO and the board chairman positions. Now, um, given that they're able to achieve this, the next portion of the recommendation would be for them to then implement training and awareness programs, like as a part of the ethics program that employees regularly go through to to just basically remain up to speed, because dealing with these types of problems is an ongoing issue. It's not something you just fix one and done and it's over. It's something that's ongoing, and you have to constantly train people, promote awareness, and get people to think in the idea of implementing checks and balances within of power within this structure of whatever type of department they're working in, or whatever project they're developing.
Mhm.
Um, and then beyond that, as a final safeguard, we are suggesting that they implement a formal policy that allows the board of directors via mass majority anonymous vote to be able to relinquish power from the CEO and essentially prevent that monarchy structure from occurring, and then move the power of decision back into a democratic process that occurs within the board of directors instead, which is a much more broad, diverse, and well rounded group of people.
Mhm.
And from there, they can essentially keep the company steering clean of many of these ethical violations where the CEO is seen as essentially a loose cannon that's just running amok with all the resources of this massive multinational enterprise.
Right. Good recommendation. Our last recommendation is aimed at preventing conflict-driven engagements. So, this recommendation is about making sure that Microsoft doesn't get pulled into war-related or politically charged projects without the proper checks in place. So, the first action taken would be to create an arm's length oversight committee. This lives outside of the regular ethics team. It would be a small board level panel that includes external experts like former diplomats, human rights lawyers, industry ethicists, people like that. This committee is necessary because our ethics team advises day-to-day decisions and updates policy, but they still report to Microsoft leadership. If executives wanted a fast track defense contract or assign staff to a conflict zone, then there's a built-in bias. So this external committee would remove that conflict of interest by judging independently. And since international affairs have drastic effects, legal, reputational, even life or death consequences, this group deserves its own mandate. The next thing uh, to be defined would be clear no-go zones and threshold triggers. The committee would map out specific contexts where Microsoft technology or personnel won't be used. So, like for example, a policy might be no data analytics products in active war zones or no engineering support for military grade projects. And threshold triggers would automatically escalate any request involving these areas to the oversight committee for review. After that, we implement a four-step high-risk contract evaluation that starts one by spotting all the possible risk in a contract, like everything from employee safety issues to potential legal trouble, and we score how bad each one is from 1 to 5. And after that, we figure out how to actually reduce those risks. Maybe it's extra training, maybe it's adding safety measures or vetting partners more carefully. Finally, there will be a last sign off where the ethics team, legal professionals, and the oversight committee all have to give their thumbs up before anything moves forward. This might be a long process, but it ensures that the company acts with ethical integrity and legal compliance. So then we got an assessment of stakeholder interests at the very start of any big proposal. This assessment would consist of employees who might be negatively affected, customers who have opinion on whether the company stays neutral or not in certain situations, local communities that might be affected, shareholders, any regulators to whom it may concern. We basically ask each group if this proposal helps them or hurts them. We take those answers, we give it to the decision makers, and they take it into consideration. Lastly, we have a biannual political risk report. So, twice a year, the committee publishes a straightforward summary of which contracts got flagged high risk and what decisions were made, like if the contract was approved, if it was changed, if it was thrown out. And this report is a way to keep everyone informed of the company's standing and aware that the committee is following through on their responsibilities. And so that is the end of this recommendation and of this presentation.
Thanks,
Here
Kevin.
are references.
Here's our reference page for anyone who's interested.
Mhm. Thank you for listening.
And we probably had about a dozen we didn't put on here because we did
Yeah.
so much research for this. But we only ended up using a portion of them because there's just so much there. So again, thank y'all for listening, and we hope that y'all enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Oh, how do I stop this recording?
I don't know. I can't stop it on
I
my
figured
side.
it out.